Right now, millions of Americans feel like something is wrong, even if they can't fully explain it. They're working, they're earning, they're doing what they were told would lead to stability. And yet every month feels tighter than the last. Rent eats more of the paycheck. Groceries cost more without filling the cart. Credit cards don't feel optional anymore. On the news, they say the economy is strong. Unemployment is low. The stock market looks healthy. But none of that matches real life. Because if the economy is doing so well, why do so many people feel like they're barely surviving? Why does progress feel impossible, even for those who did everything right? This isn't a sudden crash you can clearly see. It's not panic in the streets or banks collapsing overnight. It's something quieter. Something happening slowly, behind closed doors, inside households, inside bank accounts, inside people's minds. The truth is, the U.S. economy isn't collapsing from the top down. It's breaking from the inside out, and most people won't realize how deep the damage is until they look back and wonder when everything started to feel so heavy. On the surface, the numbers tell a comforting story. Economic growth is still positive. Official unemployment remains low. Corporate profits are strong, and the stock market continues to push higher, as if confidence has fully returned. According to these metrics, the system is working. In fact, we're told this is one of the most resilient economies in modern history. But this is where the contradiction begins. Because those numbers describe an economy on paper, not an economy people actually live in. Most Americans don't experience GDP. They don't pay bills with stock indexes. They don't feel corporate earnings calls in their daily lives. What they feel is pressure. Pressure that builds quietly every month. The strange part is that this pressure exists at the same time the economy is supposedly strong, and that creates confusion. People start questioning their own reality. They wonder if they're bad with money, if they made the wrong choices, if they somehow failed. But when millions of people feel the same strain at the same time, it stops being a personal problem. It becomes a systemic one. This is how two realities form. One where charts go up, headlines sound optimistic, and policymakers celebrate stability. And another where everyday life feels increasingly fragile. The economy isn't lying exactly. It's just telling only half the story. And the half that's missing is the part most Americans are living in right now. That missing half becomes impossible to ignore when you look at everyday costs. This isn't about luxury spending or poor choices. It's about basics. Groceries that used to last a week now barely cover a few days. Rent renewals arrive with increases that feel disconnected from reality. Insurance premiums rise quietly every year. Utilities, childcare, transportation, medical costs, all climbing at the same time. Prices didn't just spike and then return to normal. They reset to a new level. And that reset changed everything. Wages did go up for many people, but not in a way that actually improved their lives. A raise that looks good on paper disappears the moment higher rent, higher food costs, and higher interest rates kick in. People earn more, yet somehow afford less. The paycheck hits the account and is already spoken for. There's no breathing room, no margin for error. Even small emergencies feel threatening. Over time, people start cutting deeper. Vacations disappear. Eating out becomes rare. Hobbies fade away. Life shrinks. And still, the math doesn't work. That's what breaks trust. The promise was simple: work hard, gain experience, earn more, and life gets easier. But for millions of Americans, life feels harder now than it did years ago, even with higher incomes. When effort no longer leads to security, disappointment replaces motivation. And disappointment, when it lasts long enough, turns into something far more dangerous. As costs rise faster than income, debt quietly fills the gap. For many Americans, credit is no longer a tool for convenience or emergencies. It has become part of everyday survival. Groceries go on credit cards. Gas goes on credit. Medical bills get pushed to later, not because people are careless, but because there's no other option. Balances grow while interest compounds in the background. And today's interest rates turn small debts into long-term traps. Minimum payments rise, but balances barely move. People feel like they're running in place, exhausted, watching the finish line move further away. Student loans are back in full force, pulling money out of already stretched budgets. Auto loans last longer and cost more than ever, locking people into years of payments for vehicles they need just to keep working. Mortgage rates shut the door on homeownership for many who were finally ready. So, debt stacks on debt, quietly shaping decisions. People delay life plans. They avoid risks. They stay in jobs they hate because the bills don't care how they feel. This kind of debt doesn't cause panic overnight. It causes constant stress. It follows people to bed and greets them in the morning. And when an entire economy runs on borrowed time and borrowed money, stability becomes an illusion. Housing is where that illusion becomes permanent. What was once a basic foundation of stability has turned into a source of anxiety. For many Americans, owning a home no longer feels realistic. Prices climbed faster than wages for years, and now higher interest rates have sealed the gap. Even people with solid incomes find themselves priced out, not because they were irresponsible, but because the rules changed while they were playing by them. Homes are no longer just places to live. They're financial instruments, bought, sold, and optimized for returns. Large investors purchase properties in bulk, turning neighborhoods into balance sheets. Rents rise, not because costs rise, but because profit expectations demand it. Renters feel trapped, renewing leases they can barely afford, afraid to move because everything else costs even more. Without stable housing, everything else becomes unstable. People delay starting families. They move frequently. They lose community ties. Life begins to feel temporary. This isn't just a housing issue. It's a future issue. When shelter becomes speculative and security becomes optional, long-term planning disappears. Work itself has changed in ways most people didn't expect. Having a job no longer guarantees stability. Many Americans are working longer hours, juggling multiple roles, or relying on side gigs just to stay afloat. What was once sold as flexibility has become necessity. Time off feels risky. Sick days feel expensive. Burnout isn't a personal weakness anymore. It's widespread. Productivity keeps rising, but the rewards don't flow back to the people doing the work. Expectations grow while compensation falls behind. Technology was supposed to make work easier, but instead, it often means being reachable at all times, never fully disconnected. At the same time, job security feels thinner than ever. Layoffs arrive suddenly, even in profitable companies. Careers that once felt stable now feel temporary. So people keep going, not because they're motivated, but because stopping isn't an option. This kind of labor system drains more than energy. It drains purpose. When work becomes only about survival, not progress, people lose faith in the idea that effort leads to a better future. Over time, something deeper begins to break. And it isn't financial. It's psychological. People stop believing the system works for them. They stop trusting that effort leads to reward, or that patience will eventually pay off. Planning for the future starts to feel pointless when the ground keeps shifting. This is where quiet resignation sets in. Not loud protests or sudden collapse, but a slow withdrawal. People disengage, lower expectations, and focus only on getting through the next month. Hope is replaced by caution. Ambition shrinks into survival. And when enough people lose faith at the same time, the economy doesn't just slow down. It loses its momentum. Because economies don't run on numbers alone. They run on belief. This is why what's happening doesn't feel like a crash. It feels like erosion. Slow, quiet, and easy to ignore until the damage is done. The U.S. economy isn't collapsing in one dramatic moment. It's hollowing out from the inside, while pretending everything is fine. And the real danger isn't what people see today, but how much they've already learned to accept as normal.